Okay, thank you, members. It's now 2 o'clock. Thank you all for coming this afternoon. I don't think we need to do introductions because we're no members of the public here, so we'll skip that bit. So minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of September 2024. Does anyone have any comments on the accuracy of those minutes? No? Okay, so I can take those as read. Thank you. So apologies and declarations for declarations of interest. So have apologies from Kevin Hollingworth MP and Sir Alex Shelbrooke MP, who are obviously in the debate in Parliament. We've also had apologies from Councillors Sanderson and Wilkinson. Don't think there's any more apologies because I think we're all here apart from that. So come to item 4, public questions and statements. So we've had one written question from Councillor Mike Cockerill of Filey Town Council. So Nick, if you'd like to read that question out and I'll do the response.
The question from Councillor Mike Cockerill of Filey Town Council. I note that today's meeting of the Scarborough and Whitby Area Committee has a number of agenda items specifically relating to coastal matters. Item 6, Harbours Update. This includes Filey Cobble Landing. Item 9, Health in Coastal Communities. Item 13, DEFRA consultation on reform of the Bathing Water Regulations 2013. As all of these matters also pertain to Filey, what plans does the Thirsk and Malton Area Committee have to include such items in further work?
Thanks, Nikki. So my response to that is officers have discussed with me and other members the most efficient way to deal with the coastal matters through the area committees. When many of these issues affect both the Scarborough and Whitby and Thirsk and Malton areas, but Scarborough and Whitby to a greater extent. Such matters include the operation of harbours, bathing water quality, gulls and parking of motorhomes. Councillors Cross and Donoghue Moncrieff are invited to relevant meetings at Scarborough and Whitby Area Committee so that they can participate in the discussions if they wish. These councillors may decide that certain issues particularly affect their divisions and so warrant inclusion on the agenda of Thirsk and Malton Area Committee. Details of the terms and reference and delegated powers of the area committees can be found on pages 1, 2, 3 of the Council's Constitution. The area committee boundaries may be reviewed after the Boundary Commission has agreed the new divisional boundaries. So thank you for that, Nikki. Yep, Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I spoke to Councillor Cockerill regarding your reply. Councillor Cockerill is a former county councillor and one of the experts on coastal defence on the coast, being the cabinet member at SPC. And his view is he don't believe it's practical just inviting us to Scarborough and Whitby area committee meetings is the answer. Thirsk and Malton Area Committee, we are part of Thirsk and Malton, and it is Filey. We get everything what's happening with solar panels and roofing and farming and how it affects us. And we have a right on the coast to, have it discussed here at this meeting because we are one area. You know what I mean? It's Kevin's remit as well as MP. So, the view is basically, it should be discussed at this meeting. You know what I mean? It's not just isolating us on the coast. We actually are part of this committee. Or alternatively, as Councillor Les and I've mentioned to the Chief Executive many times, I don't mind moving to the East Riding. I think we'll get a better deal than we get at North Yorkshire. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. Well, Sam, if there are any issues that you and Michelle think are important to bring to this committee, in my reply, that's what I've said. So I'd welcome you to flag up anything that you think that Thirsk and Malton Area Committee can assist with. and I'll leave that with you, because I think we're just duplicating their agenda. Obviously, just by default would not be the way forward. But I'll leave it to your expertise as to which items would benefit from being heard at this committee as well. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. Just not particularly in reference in terms of how the Area Constituency Committee works, but just in terms of two of the items you mentioned that happen to fall in my portfolio. One is seagulls, the other is motorhomes, two very important subjects. I have specifically asked on those two items that you both are consulted and involved in all of the discussions, because I did feel that might be potentially the situation whereby they'd focus on the Scarborough and Whitby Area Committee and you wouldn't get your chance to have a say. So I've made sure that you should be involved in all of those consultations, all those emails that go through. Whether the reports come here is obviously a separate discussion, but just in terms of my portfolio on those issues, you should be very much involved and have the chance to have a say.
Yeah, so I think if after you've been consulted, etc., and you feel that it would still be a benefit to bring a particular item to this committee, I think if you can flag that up with myself and Nikki, and then we'll take it from there. I think that's probably the most pragmatic way to go about it. Thank you. So we move to item 5, which is rural connectivity. So I'll welcome Alistair Taylor and Kath Ritchie to deliver this report. Thank you.
Thank you. I will deliver a short update on connectivity. Kath's going to deliver a short update on mobile. And I know you've also asked for a brief discussion on vape sensors. I'm splitting them just because my report here is based on my role within the Superfast programme, whereas vape sensors is a 9net commercial thing. Whilst 9net is owned by North Yorkshire Council, I think it's just important that we try and split the two. So in terms of connectivity update, start off with, since our last meeting here, the Superfast programme for phase 4 and indeed overall has now completed. We believe we're now at around 97% coverage across North Yorkshire. That does still leave a gap of probably about 11,000 properties. So we're not saying that everybody has it. We just think that that's where we sit right now. As far as the project's concerned, this is where we kind of mostly step away, because Project Gigabit is the next intervention. Project Gigabit is run by BDUK, so it's run by central government rather than local government. So we can continue to petition to try and get things done. We can provide updates where necessary, but it is really kind of where we step back. In terms of Project Gigabit, both lots have now been awarded. For this area committee, lot 31 is the relevant lot. Both were awarded to Quickline Communications. Lot 8's got a lot more movement. Lot 31 doesn't have a huge amount of build yet, but in terms of this committee's area, there is some build going on right now around Thirsk and Sesse area, which is one that I know has come to this committee before. I'm trying to get some high-level numbers of that in order to bring that to a members seminar so that you can all get an idea of when it's going to complete, how many premises there are, what to do if you're not included. And hopefully we'll also be bringing some information about the ideas that the council has for those which aren't covered by Project Gigabit or Superfast. So looking at what will probably be the final 1 or 2%. In terms of free Wi-Fi, we now have free Wi-Fi into 21 towns. We have expanded the Malton network to cover where we previously weren't providing due to the Rydale District Council negotiated ink spot. We are on with Helmsley, but we're having difficulty in Helmsley just because of the fact that there's not many lampposts and there's a lot of listed buildings around. So we're having to talk to the parks to try and get that sorted. And we are also working on Filey, which I know came up in the previous one. So we have the capital funding for Filey. We just need to sort out the revenue side of things because Robert has left. Things are just kind of a little bit stuck in transition. But we will get that moving, and we're a little bit stuck with holiday anyway at the moment. Kath?
Thinking, Lester, it might be beneficial to take questions for yourself at this stage and then move on to Kath, because they're sort of two separate items. I don't know whether you wanted to talk about the sensor now.
Can we see that at the end?
Yeah, okay, we'll
We'll
do that at
bounce
the end
around
as
a
a
bit.
separate thing. So members, do you have any questions regarding the broadband connectivity? Yeah.
Hi, forgive me for being parochial, but whilst we've got you here, I've had a contact from Kirby Moorside Town Council saying that they've got free Wi-Fi in their town. It was supplied through Rydal District Council, which was the council at the time. They're not featured on the county council website because it's a different system and they don't support it. Is that something that you recognise or know about? Is there some reason why one market town's council supplied free Wi-Fi is different from somebody else's?
Trying to do, trying to. Turned itself off.
That's fine. So do you think that they'll be sorted in the next few months?
Yes, that's the intention.
That's fine.
I think on that matter, Greg, in Easingwell, we've got part of the town is part of the marketplace is covered by the county solution, and then there's a part that was covered by the town, and that's been we're working on that to get that all swapped over in a similar way, I think, Greg. So, Michelle.
Yeah, firstly, thanks for the update on what is obviously an extremely important issue. Can I just ask a question? And I admit it's clearly a very, very popular product. I have to admit, I've signed up for it. I like it. It works. I've got digital lines. I have no problem with it at all. Have you got any views? Appreciate there's the work that we've done, which was the 9 network and those are contracts. We've now got the phenomenon of some companies coming in installing private networks. We've got Virgin Media. The question then is being asked, do we think other companies are going to come in and do their own separate networks? How do we think all this works together? Because I suppose perhaps I naively believed at the beginning that once the network was in, it would work like Openreach, where every commercial supplier would simply use the network in the area. And not what we seem to have is separate networks being installed on the same streets. And where do we think this is going in terms of a market? Because I'm assuming some companies think if they get a network in, they basically have got a saleable commodity here that they can sell on if they want to another company. Or are we expecting that some of these initial phases that have gone in will at some point fail and then the commercial market will take over? I just wonder if you've got any concepts on that, Alistair.
Absolutely. I mean, my personal feeling is that infrastructure competition is completely unnecessary, but we'll set that to one side. I think that you will see less overbuild now because the altnet market, which is all of these other people, the bottom's completely fallen out of it. With the interest rates up, it's not as good an investment as it was before. I mean, I used to live just outside Selby, and in my village we had 3 altnets. Openreach are eventually going to come along. They'll dig it themselves as well. And the worst thing is, once Openreach done, everybody can share Openreaches. So it is all a little bit on the crazy side. I think if you've got Openreach, and if you've got Openreach plus Virgin Media, you're probably not going to see anybody else because they're all looking at it as, is this a sound investment? If there's nobody there, it's probably a sound investment. One of the problems that we had at the start was that actually they were all making the same investment decision at the same time. So they were saying, okay, nobody's there, we'll go there. But 3 people had exactly the same opinion at the same time. And they probably wouldn't have made it had they kind of got to the end. So I think there's no guarantee that there won't be further overbuild. But I think with a big national like Virgin Media plus Openreach, I think you're not going to see anybody else wanting to go into the area because there are better areas around.
No, I mean, that's the question I've asked because other people have said it to me. It seems to me obvious that Openreach are going to come in. I suppose the question that I can understand, there are areas where there's no commercial incentives. So you let the contracts to basically try and expand the network. I think the question that I'm sort of asking, why have we given public money when there were private companies who were going to come and do it anyway? And that to me doesn't make sense. Why, you know, when there were other areas that are really, really struggling to get coverage, if private companies are going to come in and set up a network, and Openreach are going to come in and set up a network and do it at their cost, and other operators can then come in and provide me with a product, did we need to use public money to put in a network in the first place that, in effect, we're saying may end up being redundant, and yet there's other communities that are still struggling to get that connection?
I think it's one of those which is hindsight is a wonderful thing, that had we known where we would be now, then the Superfast contracts would have probably looked very different. But when we first were doing Superfast, ADSL was all there was around. Nobody really could see gigabit around the corner. So we were funding. The way that we do it is we do what's called an open market review. So we ask all of the market what their plans are for the next 3 years. So we know when we've intervened with the Superfast programme, there were no plans for commercial investment within the next 3 years. So we know at that point that there shouldn't have been commercial investment. What then happened is probably 3 or 4 years ago, it just went absolutely crazy. The big investors could see it. They thought that this was a good opportunity. And suddenly, you know, you were seeing crazy amounts of build, and you were also seeing build in places which doesn't feel commercially viable. I think what you do have, it's not necessarily that this area is now commercially viable. I still think it probably isn't commercially viable. It's just that people were trying to impress investors. They thought that the sellable networks were just the most number of premises passed as possible. And so they were going in completely unviable areas just to try and get their numbers up. And what we're actually seeing in the altnet market now, it's shrinking down. They're stopping build. They're just trying to do take up because their investors are now saying, hold on a minute, you've made massive losses, but we need to get the money coming back in. And then on top of that, we're also starting to see consolidation. So we are seeing altnets either going out of business or being bought by other altnets.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, on that, Michelle, in Easing World, I've got 2 fibres coming into my house. I've got one Openreach and I've got a Zoom fibre, and the Zoom deal is much, much better. However, how that can be sustainable for them, I do not know. So, you know, it's a very interesting topic. Caroline.
Yeah, thanks, Alistair. I mean, we've got a situation where we've got fibre to the cabinet, and the village is struggling because once it leaves the cabinet, it's carried on the copper wires. So the degradation, by the time it gets to the properties, you know, you're lucky if it's at such a point I can't get a contract from BT. They won't give me a contract because they can't deliver. We've now got Quickline doing a survey, but I am really concerned that when they do this survey and they look at the number of houses, we're still not going to get anything because there aren't enough of us to make it commercially viable. Either that or it becomes so expensive we can't afford to take it. And so that will leave us with an hotspot 6 miles from the centre of York and no decent broadband for any of us.
Most of Quickline's build within North Yorkshire is funded rather than commercial. Project Gigabit works quite differently from the Superfast build. So with Superfast, what we did is we said, we've got £30 million. How many can you do? For phase 3, it was 14,239, and they could then choose any 14,239 within what we call the intervention area. Project Gigabit isn't like that. What they did is they actually said, look, here are all of these numbers. How much will it cost? So it's a £70 million project, and it's then much harder for them to not do it. So because they bid it, what they then need to be able to do to pull away isn't to say this isn't commercially viable. It shouldn't be commercially viable. That's the whole point in needing funding. They would need to show a reason why it's completely unviable, and it would need to be a reason which couldn't have been seen originally. So they can't say, well, it's not viable because the A64 is next door. The A64 has been there a very long time now. What they could say is it's not viable because there's an ancient burial ground which nobody knows about, and it's the greatest discovery of the century. That obviously they couldn't know about, but if it's anything that was even vaguely foreseeable, they can't use it as a get-out clause. So you should find that you will get it. The other thing, Quickline still have a lot of money, so their definition of not commercial is very different from most of the market's definition.
Sam.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it were pleasing because Robert just before he left, that did actually ring me and say, you know what I mean, Filey's going to get it. You know what I mean? And I'm looking forward to the day when Filey does get the network, the free network, free Wi-Fi down the main street and on the front. And I hope it is just before the start of the season, which is in April time, March, April time, when we get hundreds of thousands of visitors, and it's a question that we're always asked, well, how come you've not got it? And you know, I mean, I'm going to crack a bottle of champagne open when you know we do actually get it. So there's no pressure on you. And just moving on from that, I think we've all probably seen it in, you know, around. We've got the road, the footpaths being dug up. We've got quicklime digging every road up in Filey and every footpath, and you know, we've got emails from saying they've not repaired properly, and you know, the officers say that they are okay. I just think in the future it will cause problems to the footpaths, and I know it's not the concern; it's more of a highways concern. And then we've got, at the same time, we've got Virgin Media in there, and we've got more white vans running around and more holes being dug up, you know what I mean? And I think it's going to have a negative effect to our highway, but we have to live with it. But what I would hate to happen, and we are seeing a few poles going up, because once they've dug the road to get them to further places, they put poles up, but somebody else coming in and putting even more poles up. You know what I mean? So I think, you know, if we could stop at 2, you know, the main ones, I'd be quite happy. I wouldn't want to see every mobile network in the area. So we go from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Steve.
It's about the gigabit project and timescales, really. Like Caroline, villages, a lot of villages in my area, still copper wire. And I'm assuming the gigabit project is to switch, rather than change the houses from copper wire, will be to get the mobile signal to provide the backup. No? Okay. So in that case, then it'd be interesting to find out when the transition will be for the houses in villages like mine and Caroline's and in my area to shift to fibre, because it's just zoom, straight down. Particularly at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it just slows right down to. Trying to understand the 4G backup projects, I can get that, but we don't have the signal in our village for even the mobile signal as well. So it's just understanding that sort of 4 or 5% of villages that are going to be left completely stranded.
So I think when we look at the coverage from Project Gigabit, it is to put fibre into the home. So it is basically to replace that last bit of copper. It, depending on where you are, will depend on whether it's the funded quicklime solution or whether it's commercial, because there is still a lot of commercial going on. Openreach buildings, Scarborough, Whitby and Filey. There'll also be Malton, Pickering. So, you know, there is still a lot of commercial stuff going on as well. It will depend which side of the fence it falls in terms of how commercial your village is. If we look at the Project Gigabit build, what we're seeing is a similar situation to before, that we're still not getting out into these premises which are maybe 2 miles out of the conurbation. But whereas with Superfast, we were getting to a village of 200 premises, with Project Gigabit, it's now getting to the village of maybe 20 premises. So we're getting deeper into North Yorkshire, but we're still mostly in those kind of built up areas. And as you get that rural farm that's maybe 2-3 miles out of the village, that's where things won't start to get covered. But that is where alternative solutions like satellites do need to be investigated, because there has to be a point where, not us, because obviously it's central government, but there has to be a point where we have to say, look, this isn't a good use of tax funds anymore, and actually there are better interventions out there, including trying to intervene on satellite and potentially make satellite a more attractive proposition. If you send me details of where you are, then I can have a look at where you are in the programme.
That'd be useful, actually, because we do have it into the village. So we've got the junction, it was put in coming in from Kirby Misterton down to the village, but then, and the Motherby has it at the other side, but they've just seemed to have stopped at the River Rye. It's like, you know, and yeah, that's one village, but I know of other villages that have houses less than 100 tend to be the ones that are more affected by this. You know, you mentioned 200. Some of the other villages have got this already in.
So if you can let Steve have that information about his particular communities, I think that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I can do it. I think the other thing I'd say about 4G is all of this pushes fibre deeper and deeper in, and all mobile masts need fibre. So the further the fibre goes in, hopefully on the back of that, then the mobile operators will start to use it. So, you know, if we look at the way that Quicklime work, they'll put a cabinet into the area somewhere, and then that will need open reach fibre feed in the cabinet. But that means there's now an open reach fibre in the middle of it, a big fibre, which then a mobile operator can come along and do. So I think we might start to see some benefits in mobile on the back of that, because it starts to make things look a bit more commercial.
Okay, so
Sorry, Chair, just one, and just because this will enhance the smart meter pickup as well. So it's about, because a lot of people are saying they can't get the smart meters in their local area because of connections as well. So I'm just hoping we can capture that as well on saving energy and stuff.
Okay.
Smart meters is a bit more difficult because central government, and I don't want to criticise them, but didn't realise that we have mobile signal in the north. So the south runs on 3G, whereas in the north we run on a long wave 860 megahertz network radio. I mean, at some point, what would be great to happen is for them to just allow either, because actually that would be the solution in a lot of places. I used to live in a village just outside Selby, a big, 1,500 house village. It wasn't a small village, and most smart meters didn't work there, but we all had good 4G signal. So if they could just use 4G instead, the problem will go overnight. But unfortunately, because of how it is, because it's a single contract for the north and the south, if you can't see Arqiva's long wave radio signal, it just doesn't work, even if you could put your mobile next to it and it works. So I think that is a central government issue, which I'm hoping that they will try and fix, because unfortunately, no matter what we do here, it's not going to improve that long wave radio signal. And they have met their contract in terms of they've met their coverage percentage. So they don't really seem to be doing any further build because they're a commercial company and they're basically saying they've met the requirement. Fine-and-Dales means that you then have to have a slightly different frequency, but it is often used, I think, as a bit of an excuse. Yes, you're vaguely near Fine-and-Dales because you've got a YO postcode.
okay, so I'm going to take George, Joy, and Alison, and then we'll move on to Kath. George.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Alistair, for coming today and answering our questions. I represent Helmsley on the council. Speaking of 4G, I know how patchy it is in Helmsley. Some areas it's very good, but others are not, which is why the free Wi-Fi service is extremely important. You mentioned in the report that there are delays in Helmsley, partly because of the listed building situation. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that and give us some time frame, please?
Of course. When we built most of the public Wi-Fi networks, we built it on top of the towns which Ninet owns Wi-Fi. So we have a 240-kilometre fibre network across North Yorkshire. And in those towns, what we did is we put it on top of one of our fibres on a street column, and it was all very nice and easy. We don't have fibre in Helmsley. So what we're trying to do is be sensible with council money and instead base off the library, because the library obviously is a council presence that already exists. The problem is the library is a listed building. And we keep on having ideas, but we keep on getting pushback, because the problem is the Wi-Fi kit is relatively ugly. There's no getting away from it. It does a really good job, but it's not the prettiest stuff in the world. So we're trying to find alternative solutions. As well as that, we know that FTTP, so fibre to the premises with OpenReach, is coming to Helmsley. And there is an OpenReach product which allows us to actually put an FTTP connection outside in a little bollard. So that's the backup option. If not, that once FTTP arrives, we won't need the town hall anymore, because we can just put it outside in a bollard, and then we can use some shops that are already there. We have been speaking to the town council before, because I think from our point of view, if the town council can try and help things along, because if I try and go into a shop and ask them, can we put Wi-Fi on the outside, they're going to see the pound signs and they're going to try and rip us off. Whereas actually, if the town council goes and tries to do it, then they'll see that actually it's for the wider good. So we have been trying to work on that as well. We'll pick it up again with the town council.
At the moment, there is no specific solution way forward, but you are exploring both possibilities with Plan B.
Okay, thanks, George. Joy.
Thank you. It's just following on from what Councillor White said about Pickering's by patch, and I know that Rydale did some work for the marketplace, but I just thought, could you bring me up to speed with what's happening in Pickering?
I believe that Pickering Wi-Fi should be okay. We know that we were with Rydale's, but when we spec'd Pickering, Councillor White actually came back and said that he wanted a bigger area, and we took it to a bigger area. So I think that I think that it should be okay. But if it isn't, if there are any not spots that are being created by the other one going, just let us know, because it's much easier to just slightly expand the network.
Thanks, Joy. Alison.
Thank you. I don't quite know if this is the right if it comes under this. My concern is I've got villagers that have rushed to fibre, is it? The new phones that, yeah. And we had a village in my patch on Saturday when we had a serious outage of electricity, and their mobiles were down as well, and they had no way of contacting the outside world. Now, luckily, there wasn't an emergency, but I think this could become more and more in some of the isolated villages. And I know I was at the parish thing when we were discussing this at Hawkills, weren't we?
Yes.
And
Community partnership.
Sorry, I couldn't remember the exact term.
Okay.
And we were saying that every village should have a phone with battery backup. And I think we really do need to fast pace that out so that every community has a phone, a bit like the defibrillators, that is there for emergency use.
As far as I'm aware, Ofcom are actually consulting at the moment on making battery backup a requirement for all fibre broadband to be able to power the phone. So the intention is that actually, especially if you are in an area where there's no mobile, you shouldn't need to leave and go and find the nearest emergency phone. You should just be able to do it inside your own house. So that is the intention, to try and make it an obligation for communications providers to provide a minimum of a few hours. Now, it's not necessarily going to weather the entire storm, because if it's a really long outage, then it's still going to cause a problem, but it would at least get away from some of these shorter outages. So that's the intention from Ofcom, to try and make it so that it happens with everybody. I think if it doesn't, then we then need to consider how to make that work. What we are trying to do is we're trying to overlay connectivity not spots with 4G not spots and look at the opportunities there. So it may be a case that actually, you know, the council needs to look at opportunities for emergency phones in some of these areas, or we just need to make sure that we are being very aware that if BT try and close a phone box in that area, that actually we petition very strongly not to, because we know that this is an area which really needs it. I think it's one for us to keep a watching eye on at the moment, because I would want to really see Ofcom's policy come first, because ideally Ofcom will legislate on this and then it will just fix it for everybody.
Thanks, Alison. Good question. Right, I'm going to take one very quick question from Caroline, then we're moving on to Kath's report.
It's one, and it relates to what Alison said, because we're in an area where we often have lots of power outages, and we do have a telephone box still in the village. So the mobile signal is so bad, and the electricity connectivity is so unstable that they've left us with a telephone box. Otherwise, there would be no way of connecting to the outside world. So who do we tackle? The phone companies or the electricity company?
I mean, personally, you know, you want both really, because you actually want your electricity to work. But I can't have that opinion formally. I think the ideal is that it shouldn't cause a problem when your power is off. It should be available. The network operator is made to put batteries into the cabinet so that it does last for a few hours. You will also find, because fibre is much more passive, that there is less impact. So, you know, you'll have a cabinet that will do, say, 5,000 premises. So you might find that yours is actually in the nearest town, not in your village. And that means that maybe that's more likely to have a better power feed, at which point all you're trying to do actually is just keep your little device online, and it's much smaller batteries to make that work.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alistair. We'll come back to the sensors at the end. So, Kath, if you could update us, please.
Yeah, can do. Thank you. So you can see from the report that there's 2 national schemes at the moment to improve mobile connectivity across the region. Obviously, this is alongside commercial builds, but these schemes are aimed at where there is difficult connecting, either where there isn't anything or to offer more choice. So the shared rural network, that's about getting all 4 mobile network operators working together to provide 4G mobile coverage, and that's looking at new and improved masts. And then there's also the emergency services network, which is building new masts, and that includes 24 across North Yorkshire. We are starting to see some improvements already. but it's fair to say that that's the future is where more of it's coming, and 25-26 we'll see most of these sites becoming fully active. So whereas we don't know the exact impact yet, that is coming. So we would say keep an eye on the kind of reporting around that, and we are continuing to work with both of those schemes. We have a program manager who works directly with them to make sure that what they're saying is coming does come, and we know as soon as those things are switched on and is making mobile connectivity available. It's fair to say it's not going to get to 100%, much like the broadband story. It's looking at more like 92%. So there are certainly areas who are not going to benefit from these schemes. So we are continuing to have those conversations, try to come together as a sector to, let central government know that we do need this connectivity, that it's not good enough to stop at this percentage, and that we do need that ubiquitous coverage to make sure that we can provide our services and support our communities.
Thank you very much, Kath. Members, any questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Kath. That was an excellent report then, obviously. So, Alistair, if you could just give us an update on this commercial product that you have through 9net, please.
Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll try and keep it relatively short, and then I can just take any questions. So I know there was somebody from this who wanted to talk about vape sensors. We at 9net, so this is with my commercial hat on, we have a product called Fly Sensor. I do have it with me if anybody wants to have a look at it. The intention of it is to put vape sensors in schools across North Yorkshire, or indeed across the UK. The idea with it is that actually it alerts a member of staff, it lets them know that there's vaping going on in the toilet or wherever it is, and then a teacher can go and find out what it is. The vape sensor can also differentiate between types of vapes, not flavors, but whether it's tobacco or what. And so that also means that it can help if there is potentially drugs rather than nicotine within it, that they can have a look at that as well. I mean, that's pretty much it. They've been around for a while now. 9net's the exclusive UK distributor of the FlySense one. There are a couple of competitors. We've done some of our own testing. We actually had to do quite a lot of work on it because one of the things that we found, they're all American products because America has a lot more of an issue. Plus, they've also got gunshot detection, which very much shows that it's an American product. But what we found is that actually they don't work straight away because UK vapes are very different from American vapes. American vapes are full of the heavy elements which the UK government prohibits from happening. So we've done various tests. We can see that it works. And now we're trying to get it out into North Yorkshire schools.
Thank you. That's very interesting. Any questions? Yeah, Steve.
I think my kids already think it's in Malton School. I think Malton Secondary School already has them installed. Is that right? Do you know?
It's entirely possible they do. They definitely don't have it with us. There are other products on the market. It's Halo, which is the big competitor. So we know it is in a few places. Malton's only just academised, and I don't think that Pathfinder have done a huge amount with it. But we are trying to get into the market. Halo is around. Halo's more expensive and in our opinion not as good, but that's my commercial opinion, not a council opinion. But it is possible that they already have
it. Yes. Yeah, Gareth.
I mean, as well as the moral side to this, there's clearly a commercial side, otherwise you wouldn't be pursuing it. So why are you just limiting your marketing to North Yorkshire schools, given we're the sole distributor?
You should have a place on my board, Gareth, because that's exactly what I get asked most of the time. We don't limit to North Yorkshire. We are looking everywhere. We're actually, I've got one of my engineers going up to Scotland, I think next week, to have a look at a Scottish school. We always focus on North Yorkshire just because we have 400 schools within North Yorkshire who take business from us. We've also now got 60 schools within the city of York. So we try and kind of focus on our home ground, because if we're already in the door with broadband, it's much easier to then raise discussion. But we're definitely not limiting it. When we're doing telesales campaigns, it's across the country. We work with NES, and NES obviously don't limit to North Yorkshire.
Thank you very much. So thank you, Alistair. Thank you, Kath, for coming today to give your reports. It's very welcome. And do feel free to go. Don't feel obliged to hang on till the end of the meeting. I know you've got important things to do. So we now come to item 6, which is the parish sector liaison. So I'll welcome Christine Phillipson and Mark Codman to deliver these reports. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting us this afternoon to talk about parish sector liaison within North Yorkshire Council. We have got a presentation, but you've had it circulated prior to the meeting, so I'll just highlight a few things from that, if that's okay, Chair. Thank you very much. It'll be done with myself and Christine, and we'll split it between us in terms of the actual content. So parish sector liaison, I think my team have been in post since May, and I think Christine has been in post since about big turn of the year, I think. But I think when I took over, I knew that we had a lot of parish councils within North Yorkshire, but I don't think anyone had actually sort of compared us elsewhere, or where we saw ourselves, or what the actual relationship was that we had. And I've given you some facts and figures there. Most councils with parish councils in their area, most of them, the majority, have less than 200. I think over 50% have got less than 30. There's only 2 with over 300. And certainly the next nearest to us has got 327. So we're significantly different in terms of the parish council makeup compared to any other council. So for me, that's a unique opportunity to develop a relationship with a large group of parish councils and develop a significant relationship. I think I've given you a small breakdown there. We've got a significant number that are parish meetings, so that's a quarter of our parish councils are those smaller councils of parish meetings, which in some cases are willing individuals who put their name forward to represent their area in the smallest part of the local government organisation in terms of a parish meeting. And of those councils, I think it's fair to say that a significant number compared to others don't charge a precept, and where we do, it's generally less than other comparable areas and other comparable councils. So in terms of our relationship, in terms of devolution, in terms of communication, in terms of what we expect and what we have expected in the past, I think that does give you gives us something to think about in terms of how we relate to communications, consultations, engagement. It has an implication for those kind of things, and particular devolution. It gives an indication of potentially the support that councils are able to give to those kinds of initiatives, and the way that we can expect some kind of dialogue in terms of those kind of issues. I've given a small breakdown of the Thirsk and Malton area in terms of parish councils. It's pretty similar to the rest of the areas in terms of compared to North Yorkshire. There's nothing outstanding there in terms of anything that stands out. So it's generally representative of the council area as a whole. So in terms of parish sector liaison, what I will say, and I always say at this point, parish sector liaison is the responsibility of every service and everyone working for North Yorkshire Council. It's not just a team or a particular function. It's everybody's responsibility to have a relationship and have their own service relationship with their own parish councils, or those parish councils they come into contact with. But there are 2 teams specifically with parish liaison responsibilities. There's my team in localities, parish liaison, local devolution, community rights, and there's Chris's teams in democratic service and local area support team. So I'll talk about my side of it, and then Chris will talk about sort of the democratic services side. So my team sits within localities. So in localities, we have localities, communities, and also migrant side of it as well. And in my team at the moment, there are 3 members of staff. There's myself, Claire Wilson and Peter Cole. And reason I'm saying their names is because I'm hoping that parish councillors in all areas will have been in contact or be contacted by my staff for various reasons, because of the work we actually do. We are responsible for the parish charter in terms of development and everything else, local devolution, parish liaison generally in terms of consultation, coordinate communication, engagement, support. We have been involved in changes to the parish portal, and we are responsible for community rights, assets community value, community rights challenge, which particularly have an impact for parish councils, and they have a particular role in that legislation. So the work that we've done has been related to those areas. So I'll start off with the parish charter. I'm hoping that everybody knows what the parish charter is, and certainly when we've asked parish councils, they are certainly aware of what the parish charter is. It was something that was agreed by the North Yorkshire Council in discussions with the parish sector sometime in late 2023. Now that gives certain commitments on behalf of this council in terms of what their relationship is with the parish sector. It tells parish councils how we intend to correspond with them, how we intend to consult, certain timescales for those kind of responses, and certain timescales for consultation. So again, that's what we said we would do. So for me, the base on which parish sector liaison in terms of my team is how are we doing that as a council? How are we taking those responsibilities and those commitments? So I've taken that as a starting point in terms of our relationship. We're currently done some review of that. We committed to undertake a review within a certain period of time and keep it under review. So we've done some review with the parish sector at the moment. I think generally it's very well known amongst a lot of parish councils. And I think the general view is we can do better. We haven't, in their view, kept up to those commitments within the parish charter, and therefore it's the role of all the council to commit to that. But my role within the council to reflect that and embed the commitments within that parish charter within our services. Because I think everyone knows we've undertaken a long period of reorganisation. Services have moved, people have moved, and I think some of the ways that the parish charter was originally communicated to services may well need to be revised, refreshed, and gone through again with the way the services have been restructured to embed that in the new ways of working for the new council. So I'm in a cycle of going around all the council services and discussing the ways in which it's working at the moment, and to being perfectly honest, reflecting back some of the comments we've had from the parish sector. My team have been round and organised parish liaison meetings in all areas, parish liaison drop-ins. So in each area and the area constituency based areas, we have a drop-in day in advance of the main meeting, where we invite all the parish councils of that area to come in, have a chat, see what the issues are, and then at the formal meeting later on, they come and we'll have the relevant officers there who can perhaps give some overview of the issues that have been brought up, but have that one-to-one engagement with parish councils. So we're halfway through now. We will be in at Christmas and we'll be finished by March. We're hoping to do that twice a year, so we'll be going around each area twice. And just to keep you up to date, in the Thirsk and Malton area on the 4th of March, we'll have a drop-in session, and the 27th of March, there'll be a formal liaison meeting in this area. Those details of the venues and the dates will be circulated, and you will all receive a copy of that. In other things that we're doing with the parish sector, we've also got a parish consultation panel where we've got a representative sample of parish councils in all areas, and they're willing to sort of share ideas with us on a regular basis. So we consult with them. We're aiming to do that once a month, so we can get a regular understanding of what the issues are for each the parish councils across the whole county area, North Yorkshire Council area. So we're doing that regularly. We've already consulted them about the parish charter and various other things, just to help us develop the way that we're operating as a team. We're also but we've introduced a parish liaison email address with myself and Christine's team, where we're encouraging all parish councils who do not know where to go in the new council, who are struggling to find the right person, to come and just email us, and we will put you in touch with the right people, the right service, the right officers, on the basis that when we've settle down as a council, those relationships will develop in the future. But at the same time, I think the main message we got when we spoke to parish council was the fact that we didn't know where to go, we didn't know who to talk to, and there's certainly some things that have fallen through the gaps where we perhaps were doing things before and we just they didn't naturally fit with where we structured as a council. So we're helping to make those relationships again. And I think we were just doing some work yesterday, and I think of the 664 councils, my team, through doing this work and other work, I think we've actually spoken face to face or on the telephone or at meetings with about half of those parish councils. So that's why I'm saying hopefully my team or myself will have spoken directly to parish councils across the whole council area, and we must have dealt with 300 or 400 queries in terms of the comments. We've liaised with the YLCA with their branch meetings. They brought forward queries that have been long-standing, and we've liaised with them and passported them onto the various sections as well.
So that's parish liaison work generally. We've facilitated some discussions with Highways about the parish portal. Hopefully that you'll know that I think it's a week or so's time, the parish portal will no longer be supported, and therefore we have worked with a solution to address that and work with parish councils to work them out when they transition to logging on with the new customer portal. We are working with consultation teams within the council, because I think one of the criticisms we have had is we just send out lots of consultations. We don't think how we're doing it. We have 6 consultations landing on a parish council at the same time, expecting responses within 3 weeks. It's not reasonable. It's not, equitable with who the parish councils are and their ability to respond. If we want a meaningful engagement, we've got to meaningfully give them an opportunity to engage. So again, it's to improve that process that we're looking at. We're looking at timetabling consultations, making sure that we give them the appropriate timescale to respond. I think we're giving them an opportunity to have the 12-week guidelines, which we promote in the parish charter, so that there's an opportunity to have a parish council meeting to address that in terms of giving a response back, and also in the consultations we do, giving the opportunity of the parish council to respond as an organisation. Quite often we send a consultation which will say just respond, and it's either a resident, a business, whatever. There isn't always an opportunity for parish council to respond in their own right. So again, if we've got a commitment to feedback, and that's the other thing we've been told, that we don't feed back very well. So again, we're taking that on board and we're doing that. So that's parish liaison, and we're also reviewing sort of our community rights process, asset community value. But again, that's not the purpose of today's discussion. And again, we're also introducing training regarding any of this. But for us, we're promoting the single point of contact with the parish liaison email address. We're also looking at developing a website which was specifically aimed at information for parish councils. That's something that we'll be developing in the near future. So things that we have been told are very difficult to find in our on our North Yorkshire Council website. Information that's pertinent to parish councils, we're going to bring it together in one place and make sure that they can have adequate access to that. And I'll pass on to Christine. Question. Oh, sorry. Do you want to have questions?
Yeah, we can take questions for you first, I think, Mark, and that's probably the best way to do it. But I'd just like to say first that as a clerk of several parish councils, the single point of contact email is excellent, because I think with all the reorganisation and the LGR, all our traditional contacts, our officers that we used to deal with as clerks, all those relationships had gone or have been changed, and they were left wondering who is now in charge of X, Y, and Z. So I think that's very helpful. On the consultation side, again, excellent, because we were just getting bombarded with consultations saying respond within 3 weeks. Well, the meeting's not for another 4, and we've got 6 consultations here. There's no way parish councillors are going to be able to engage. So I think, the reform of that. And just a quick question before I move on to members' questions is, you've done some good liaison with YLCA, and I've seen that happening. I didn't know whether you'd liaised at all with the SLCC, the Society of Local Council Clerks.
Not as yet, but we will.
I think that's probably an important step. Thank you. So I'll take George first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for presenting. Appreciated. I've actually attended this presentation because you've been doing the round across the area committees, and it is very helpful. I always learn new things from it. You mentioned North Yorkshire has the largest number of parishes, but I think Thirsk and Malton within North Yorkshire has the largest number of parishes within North Yorkshire, if I am not mistaken. So yes, it is one of the most rural parts of the country. And this is why communication is extremely important with the parishes. I think I'm very impressed by the update that's sent monthly by Peter Cole. However, I have a couple of questions in terms of communications. The first one is that my understanding is that's only being sent to the clerks of the parishes, not to all the members of the parishes. Is that correct? And then just a couple of questions on that. The other one is related to contact details. When there are some important updates that I like to share with the parishes within the division I represent, I try to email everyone involved, whether councillors or clerks, etc., so that the message is out and as many people as possible are aware of it. Their contact details used to be online, and I think they are still online, but they are not regularly updated, and some of them are out of date. So is there an actual progress that's being carried out in order to update?
Contacts. So in terms of the updates that we send out, that's probably something I didn't say. Once a month, we do send out a regular update with things that are important to the parish councils. One went out on Wednesday of this week. It's the last Wednesday in each month. We try and draw together everything that's important to parish councils, and we do send it out to the clerks and relying on them to circulate it on wider, because that's our recognised method of contacting parish councils. We keep that list of clerks very much up to date, and by us sending it out from one point of contact and getting the feedback that those, because we parish clerks change all the time, and Chris will come on to this in a second, so I'll pass over to her. We can literally send out a circulation to all parish council contact points, and we'll get a bounce back from 2 or 3 that have changed in the space of a day or a week. So if we're in control of, not control, but when we send out something regularly from one address, we know as soon as possible when those addresses change and those clerks' details are wrong. And I'll pass over to Chris, because Chris, his team have done a significant piece of work in bringing together all those contact details across all the previous district and borough councils. And this is one mechanism we use to actually keep that up to date. So I'll just pass over to answer that query.
Could we just leave that question until I could, and then I'll elaborate a little bit more on that as I go through, if that's okay.
Sorry, great.
Yeah. Malcolm. Yeah, thanks, Chair. My biggest concern around parish councils at the moment is the stability of them. I'm sure this is a familiar story right across the area. They are struggling to co-opt or recruit people into parish councils. I don't think people appreciate the value that parish councils do sometimes. And I think this is probably a piece of work we could probably do. They need some help with recruitment and retention of parish councillors. And I think that needs a bit more of a corporate approach. It's not something that can be done piecemeal with individual parishes. They've exhausted the pot. But I think important part of that recruitment is to raise the profile and the added value or they actually perform within their parishes. And if this is something we could probably do from the centre, or if it's work in progress, then apologies.
I think from my perspective,
Microphone, sorry.
It must have gone. From my perspective, I think if I can make things as easy as possible for parish councils and enhance the work that they do in terms of not giving them a role, but understanding the importance of them. I had a conversation this morning in one of the leadership teams, I won't mention which service, and they were very much supportive of recognising the importance of the parish sector. So we have a whole, a raft of democratic organisations which reflect the whole of North Yorkshire Council area. They have a wealth of knowledge, an in-depth understanding of their area. They don't just represent one particular issue. It's a representative, holistic view of that particular area. And I think it's something that if we recognise as a North Yorkshire Council and recognise the importance and build on that, hopefully that will be reflected in the importance of that recognition to the individual areas, and it might encourage others to sort of take part, because it is recognised an important part by North Yorkshire Council and work and the engagement we have with parish councils directly. But they are their own organisations and they are unique, and I'm sure Chris will probably say a bit more about that. And there are difficulties in recruiting. We do recognise that. We can do as much as we can to recognise the importance of them, to obviously help on that process.
Thank you. Steve.
Yeah, thanks. When you've done your survey over here, and of all the parish council and the issues, are you going to publish what feedback you received from the parish councils?
No, microphone, Steve. Sorry, it's gone off again. Yeah.
Yeah, don't turn yours on.
Yeah.
I know. Modern technology, eh? Just, are you going to publish the feedback that you've been receiving from the parish councils? I think you're still in that consultation, or not consultation, survey, should I say? And the other thing is really, I'm looking at the updates that you've sent out, and obviously we're trying to encourage the parish councils to report directly into the one email or what issues they've got to connect with officers. I wonder whether actually then it will be possible to generate potentially either a constituency report on some of the issues to keep the councillors appraised of some of the issues. Because if it's suddenly the communication lines are going straight into North Yorkshire, some of the councillors are just going to go to, and the councillors will be on the not on the back foot, will be wanting to help, can help, but actually not be aware until it's, do you see what I mean? It's just about how we can facilitate communications between the councillor, parish councils and the council.
That keeps going up. That's a very good point.
Just come back to that. Up until recently, I had 17, and I've now got 5, so I'm well experienced with them. But my experience tells me that a parish or town council will go down the formal route. If there's an issue, they'll come to me. That's how I roll. I'm just frightened all the time that it's sort of data creep. It's not a criticism of you, Steve, but you know, we're asking a lot. What we're going to do with that information? I'm overloaded with data, to be honest, as a local member. Unless there's an issue, I don't think we need to know.
Talking about the issues and the way the way I deal with it, and I think Malcolm will back me up on this. So if I get an issue raised by my parish councillor's clerk, what I will do is I will email, if I know, I will email like Area 2 to Deborah to say an issue or whatever. But I also, what I do is, Steve, is I copy in Malcolm, who's things. So Malcolm's in the loop. So I think some of it's down to the clerks. If they had an issue, they should copy you in, and then you would be aware of the issue. And maybe it's something you can ask your clerks if they will do that.
Yeah, that already happens. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what the service you're trying to lift is, trying to lift some of the data off the councillors that Gareth's moaning about, and actually make it facilitating the communications between the parish councillors and the councillors to get issues done. What I think maybe sometimes it'd be good is just to keep the councillor, the ward member, just updated on what's going on, even if it's a quarterly thing, just because it's just good for us to keep an eye on and where you think we can help and sort something out, possibly that doesn't even need that assistance. But if councillors don't want that, fine. Yeah, I'll just ask for it directly anyway. But it just seems, you know, sensible to have communications between everyone.
Do you want to respond?
Yeah, respond to it.
Yeah, just a comment on that. I mean, our role is we're not there to have a different response to services. We're there to support the role and facilitate them. There is something in what you say in terms of perhaps we can feedback, because we do have the area committee meetings. So when we've had those, we do produce minutes of the issues which were raised. So we will circulate those the relevant members for that area. I think that will go some way. And I'm thinking you're absolutely right. I think probably on an annual basis, we'll probably think about the end of the 6 months being, you know, going for 3 or 4 months. We might do a summary of the issues and perhaps break it down by area if we can, and then that will help. So as I say, it's a halfway house, but we'll work on that. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Caroline.
Thank you very much. Like most people around this room, I have a significant number of parish councils. The biggest single issue that I have in my area is the lack of clerks and parish councils that are struggling to cope with the level of workload because there are simply not enough parish clerks. Now, no disrespect, but I do think we need to be trying to do a recruitment drive to try and find parish clerks and to train them properly, because I have had a number of issues where parish clerks are not trained properly and the impact is huge on the parish, and it really concerns me. So I think there's a whole host of things that we need to think about, whether North Yorkshire starts to offer training, whether and we make that training a paid for service. I'm not saying that we're suggesting for a moment that we do it for nothing, but that we do train our parish clerks, because parishes can fall over because there is no clerk, they can get it wrong. And I was at a parish council meeting last week, and the amount of stuff that had come into them, they were then saying, we're just simply not paid to do this work. and it's too much.
You're absolutely right. I do understand that, and which is why we're trying to make our approach and our relationship with the private sector a lot easier and a lot more straightforward for that very reason, in terms of making Clark's life obviously a lot easier and a lot simpler. And Chris is probably more geared up for talking to that, but we do work with the YLCA as well, so we do a lot of work with there, so perhaps we can actually look at that and contribute to that. But Chris will come on to that in terms of her side of it.
Thank you. Dan.
Yeah, and I just come back to your point of as clerk copying in your local councillor with issues you're sending upstream. It would be helpful to have that happen the other way as well, so that if parish liaison is communicating directly with clerks to copy in the local councillor. I think that would be really helpful to be in the loop at that level.
And I mean that does happen. I know certainly from Area 2 with Deborah, you know, she will copy me in sometimes on matters pertaining to the town council. So
totally agree that happens. I'm talking about the parish
yeah,
liaison group.
Yeah, but you're right. I think that would be a positive thing, Dan. So Mark.
Yeah, we'll certainly have a look at that, but some of them aren't necessarily major things, and
a lot of emails that aren't major things, but then I decide which ones to spend time on, which ones not to. So,
Alison.
Replying to my colleagues about emails, the danger is when you get these reply all on something that's you don't want to be involved in, really. I mean, you know, we all know, we get it from when people are saying if they're coming to a members seminar or something. It really annoys me livid. But yeah, you know, so yeah, no, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I know what I was going to talk about. I think it would be useful if there was some platform that North Yorkshire set up that had what overarched all of the parish councils' websites, because there are a lot of parish councils that have got a website which is substandard, I think, and is making a token effort for its parish council. I mean, I don't know if there's rules and regulations what should be on their websites, but there certainly needs to be some training, and also a lot of them are finding it difficult financially to find somebody to design it if it's a small parish council. And I know they can raise the precept, but they do find it difficult to raise the precept to create a website.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because the parish and town councils are their own legal entity responsible for their own business, etc. And North Yorkshire, in terms of what we are in a position to do, it is difficult, but it is a good point. And some parish council websites are brilliant and some aren't. It's not for us to determine for them to keep their own websites up to date. We do ours, and we have all of the information up to date as far as we practically can in terms of the contacts from the clerks, etc. But yeah, it's something that is something to look at in the future, but with potentially 664 of them, it's a mammoth task to look at that as a whole. I think the best sort of solution maybe is to work with them and just support them, and, you know, suggest ways that they can improve it, and obviously work with the YLCA, because they have a lot of useful information. And just coming back to the point about clerks and training of clerks, there are some training facilities on the YLCA to train new clerks. There is a cost to it, but I don't think it's a huge cost, but it's something to worth looking at. But yeah.
Council in my own village refused to join the YLCA.
I think the problem there is, I mean, they are autonomous local authorities in their own right, and they will choose whether they precept. They will choose what they precept. They will choose whether they join the YLCA. I would think my recommendation would be they do. They will choose whether they have a website. There's many companies out there who will do you a website within a few days. A parish council website. I've gone through that process, and again, where does the money come from? You precept for it. What should you be putting on your website? Legislation, Transparency Act, etc., dictates what you have to publish. So, you know, they are their own authority, and I'm conscious of us not telling grandma how to suck eggs in a way that, you know, we don't have as far as I understand, we don't have an obligation in any way to basically manage how the parish councils meet their legal obligations. They should be doing that as a matter of course.
Just to add one more thing, from the YLCA, they have negotiated themselves their own website, but underneath they've negotiated a significantly smaller fee to prepare to develop a website with smaller parish councils. We've been asked to advertise that to all those councils that aren't members of YLCA, and that will be going out in the next week or so with an indication of cost, which I've had a look, it's not significant and might be really significant. I understand that for every cost is significant. I understand that, but it's a reasonable cost. But that information will be going out in the next week or so.
Michelle.
I mean, just briefly on it, and I think you're right. We need to. I mean, I think there needs to be some form of firewall between parish councils and North Yorkshire Council, and that's where the YLCA comes in here in terms of training and future planning. But I do think, I mean, I've spoken to one parish chairman who does have a concern. Everybody keeps saying there's an issue about getting future clerks, but there seems to be no plan about how we're going to address this issue. And it's all very fine for YLCA keep turning up to parish council saying there's a problem. It is the YLCA's job to try and resolve this. We do have formal training through Silca and Ilca, so there is, you know, it is a recognised system, but it needs to work with the parishes. I mean, the truth is with parishes, my experience is you can go from a fantastic parish in 6 months to one that's an absolute basket case, and it does happen very, very quickly. And for me as a member, having a good functioning parish council in an area that is proactive is brilliant. It's in my interest, so I try and, where I can help them, if things are going wrong, I will. But there are sometimes where you just have to stand back and let them sort it out themselves, especially in some villages. You just got to let them deal with their issues, and there are times when you need to intervene, but there are times when you need to help them to help themselves, because you can end up, if you're not careful as a local member, you can make a bad situation worse, especially if you don't live in a village, in my experience. I think one thing I would just say, and I think there's been sort of, I think, an approach which I think has certainly improved for me from the transition with from district and county to a unitary, is I think an approach of trying to treat all parish councils in an area as pretty much equal, or at least look at things on their merit. I think historically what we had in our area was a frustration that Filey Town Council was being treated as though it was a supremo and better than everybody else, and in effect that its complaints were being reacted to more proactively than the ones of the parish councils. And I think we need to be very, very careful about that, because places in Hunmanby, Speed and whatever else, irrespective of their size, sometimes can have a really, really big problem, and being a small village doesn't mean that problem shouldn't be addressed. And one council having allowed bully pulpit and therefore getting into the press should not be allowed to drown out the voices of smaller communities. It is hard enough, as we said here, it is a thankless task being a parish councillor. It's very difficult sometimes when somebody says they're thinking about doing it, you're going to say, do you want to do it? You live in a world with Facebook and everything else. You can't do anything now without criticised. No matter how good it is, you are criticised. And you are, and it often strikes me as a lot of parish councillors simply aren't prepared by their councils for the reality of what happens when you become a councillor, and how public react to you and how the public engage with you. And I've had it where parish councillors get shown parish council things and they immediately try and pass it on to me. And I've had to go back to them this week and I said, look, if you see it and you've got a complaint, you report it. Right? I expect you to do your job. That is what you're expected to do. So I think there's an element for us as members. You can end up, if you're not careful, doing somebody else's job for them. And you've got to be a critical friend. You've got to be a constructive friend. And you've got to be a helpful friend. But there is an element here. We have to also say to these parish councils, you are individual bodies on your own. You have your accounts, everything else are separate, and you must act accordingly. And the risk is sometimes as a council is that we go in and try and fix things for them. Sometimes you've got to let people make their mistakes and learn from it. But so I think as members, we've always got to strike that balance. I think it's in our interest that they work. It's in our interest that they're good. it's also in just council's interest that they work and that they're good and they're constructive because they can deal with stuff. And I'll certainly go back to mine about this parish liaison email address, because we've had some issues around the transition about who deals with what. And as the structures are still evolving, I think that's reasonable. But I think it's, yeah, I suppose I have huge sympathy, particularly for ones in smaller villages where it feels like you're almost in a goldfish bowl and you walk down the street and somebody's moaning at you about something and you're not always got the ability to solve it. And I think so therefore it's just, we just need to be careful here that we're, I think, helpful to our parish councils, but also honest with them about where their responsibilities lie.
Points well made. Points well made, Michelle. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, fine, Mark.
Just to reinforce, I agree entirely about recognising each individual parish council for the area in which they represent in that particular parish council. That's what I'm trying to emphasise that within our council to make sure that we do that. So just to reinforce that point.
Thank you. So if we could move on to Christine now. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. I will be brief because I think we've touched on quite a few of the things that I was going to talk about.
Sorry to steal your thunder.
But yeah, it's nice to be back in the council chamber. I spent many late nights here. So yeah, long late nights. So in terms of the local area support team, we sort of look at the democratic services support, governance support, whereas Mark's team is around sort of everything else that parishes have an interest or a question or a query on. So there's myself and two members of the team, Harriet and Charlie, who some of you will have come across at some point before. We've also got within the 3 area teams across the whole of the county, excuse me, we've actually got a lead member in each of those teams who is looking after the maintenance, if you like, of the data that is coming in from the parish councils. Obviously, the amount of parish councils that we've got, that one of the first tasks that we did, if we just move on to the next slide, Nikki, one of the first tasks that we did was to try and accumulate all of the information. Obviously, coming into a unitary authority, there was 731 parish contacts, 664 parish councils that we've got as now, and the districts and boroughs recording of the information was very, very different. So it was a case of pulling all of that information together, which is absolutely vast in terms of the amount of data. I mean, some parish councils will have 2 or 3 councillors, some will have 15, and the churn, not so much on the councillors, although that does happen, but the clerks, as we've touched on earlier, you know, trying to get that information up to date is like trying to knit fog, because it just changes on a frequent basis. But we've pulled all of that information together, and the specific leads in those teams will work very, very hard to make sure that that data is accurate and is up to date. And that data is what's then reflected on the website. So it's key that our public facing website is up to date, as that's where most people will go to look for parish and town council contact details. So we've got the clerk details up to date. We've got the councillor details up to date. It was in various different formats because everybody was doing it in a different way. So we've made it a consistent view now so that it all looks the same no matter how you look through it. And we've got the contact details for the clerks, and that's it. And anything that changes is updated on a regular basis. And that, again, is a task within itself. We're trying to encourage, and it's worked to a certain degree, but we're trying to encourage the parishes to have a generic contact email address, because that's so much easier. There are still a few that have a personal email address, and there's sort of 2 issues with that. One is the fact that if that changes, it's then creating another email address for the next person that's that particular clerk. But also that email address is out there on the website for all to see. So we're trying to encourage, and the YLCA are doing a very similar thing, to encourage the parish and town councils to have a generic email address. So it doesn't matter if the clerk changes. It doesn't matter if the clerk changes 3 or 4 times throughout the course of the year. That email address will remain the same. So the contact details that we're using, whether it's us, whether it's Mark's team, whether it's Highways, whether it's anybody else that's using that information to send information or whatever out, it's accurate information. We're trying to sort of get highways to move away. We've had an example recently where they're using an email address to send things out to the parish and town councils, and they're using a contact list that, you know, hasn't been updated for 2 years. Well, half of it gets a bounce back. That's going to happen. So we're trying to encourage everybody to come through myself and our absolute up-to-date accurate information, which is what's faced on the website. But obviously if they want lists of particular contacts, then we can provide that. That's not a problem. So that's one of the big issues that we've sort of tackled initially. We've pulled together, we get a lot of queries from parish and town councils. We've pulled together sort of a frequently asked questions list, if you like. We get a lot of queries, for example, what do they do when they have to advise of a resignation, a co-option, etc., etc. So we're building work to sort of support the parish and town council clerks primarily with that sort of information. Making sure that register of interests are recorded as well. Obviously, it's the members' responsibility to do that, but we're still chasing to try and find the missing ones to get them published and on the website. We've been managing temporary appointments. We've touched a bit earlier on the difficulty that there is to, first of all, recruit to a parish councillor position, but then secondly, to retain that as well. And there has been examples where, and there's obviously people in this room that have been through that, where we make temporary appointments onto some of the parish and town councils because they just do not have the number of councils to operate. They're not core, and they just can't, you know, run the business. So we've had to do that. And I think there's a bigger issue in terms of just the sheer number of parish and town councils that we've got, looking at the figures. And obviously there is a local government boundary review going on at the moment, but I think there's an element of looking at that as a whole after that and seeing if we can reduce somehow. We have had a number of requests from parish and town councils for community governance reviews where they've asked to, you know, merge with another parish council, change from a parish council to a parish meeting. We've had examples of this, and I think that's a much bigger piece of work that we need to look at post the boundary review, because that will help to alleviate some of the problems that we're seeing at the moment. We work closely with elections now in terms of managing the communication between the data that they have, the data that we have, obviously making sure that we're all aware when people have resigned and there's a notice of vacancy, and that's you know, sort of nobody's called for an election, we have to co-opt, etc., etc. We work closely with Mark's team, and also we've been doing some work of late, just touching on the parish portal that we touched on earlier, in terms of how that's going to look once that is turned off, and it's going to be a customer portal. But we've been doing some work with the team that are pulling that information together behind the scenes, so that the contact information that we've shared with them, and that information is up to date. So in terms of drilling down to see what's coming through that new parish portal, we'll be able to look at that and see how many queries are coming from different areas. But yeah, that's a piece of work that we've been doing. And then obviously we support the Standards and Governance Committee as well, and I'll touch on that in a second. And then there's other things that the team do, but this is the areas that are specific to the parish and town council support. So just touching on governance, we have said earlier that North Yorkshire Council is the principal authority for parish and town councils in terms of the Localism Act. And the only responsibilities that it has is to receive the handling and complaints that a parish or town councillor has breached their code of conduct. And we have we obviously need to publish the register of interests and have the information on the website. In terms of other issues from parish and town councils, they haven't published their agenda on time. They haven't handled something correctly in one of the parish meetings, etc., etc. Those kind of queries and questions, we don't have any jurisdiction over that. That has to be dealt with by the parish and town council itself. As we've said, that their own legal entity, they work to their own standing orders. So that is something that is referred back to the parish and town clerks. And there's some really good parish and town council operations out there, and that's something else that perhaps in the future we need to look at and do some buddying up or some work in terms of, you know, getting the really, really good operators out there and the good systems to help with the ones that maybe aren't operating quite so well, and you know, help and support each other as they go along. And just for a bit of context in terms of complaints, we're talking about parish and town council complaints and the number that we've had. So just since vesting date investing date on the 1st of April 2023. The monitoring office inbox has had, it's probably a higher figure than that now because that's up to August 24. It'll be probably pushing on nearly 300 complaints. And obviously the amount of work that goes with that, and there's primarily the governance lawyer and the governance officer who deal with all of that, the assessments, the investigations, etc., etc. So it's just to give it a little bit of context, really, in terms of how much work is coming through the monitoring officer inbox in terms of complaints against parish and town councillors. So that's it, really. We've touched on a couple of things earlier, I think, that I said I would come back to, but there's just another slide that has got some useful contacts on. So that has got the details of the YLCA and NALC, etc., and the parish charter, and obviously the parish liaison inbox. So it's just reinforcing that message, really, that parish liaison inbox is in there, and it's there for anybody to sort of send any queries or questions to, really. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Christine. Any questions, members? Yeah, Dan.
One question that you may or may not know the answer to, of course, which is about, I understand there's a push for parish councils to move towards .gov.uk domain addresses for their websites and their email addresses. Is that something you are involved with at all?
They can, we're not involved with it. There isn't, I mean, they can use, and it would be ideal for them to have a .gov or a domain address that's not a personal email. I think the YLCA have been in communication with some of the parish and town councils in terms of supporting that. We're not doing it as a council, but I think the YLCA are helping to support that so that they can take steps to do that.
So those are standalone, they're not beneath northyorks.gov.uk?
No, no. I can provide that. I'll send that separately because I do have it. I just didn't include it in this, but yes, I can certainly send that separately. Yeah.
Caroline.
Yes, can I just pick up on what Dan's just requested, which is an analysis, because I think we need to understand whether the complaints are coming because they don't feel supported, they haven't got a clerk, they're not doing it right, and in order to help, we need to do that better so that we get less complaints. And
the complaints in terms of the area that I'm talking about is against members specifically. So in terms of the information I'll be able to share, it will be numbers, obviously not in detail, but it'll be numbers in terms of how many there are, how many were sort of filtered out at the first instance, and how many go on to hearings and investigations and subsequent hearings. But yes, certainly provide that. In terms of complaints about parish and town councils and how they operate, then that's something that,
I think it's more the types of complaints. I don't want to know who the specific individuals are, but the types of complaints that are coming in, whether it's a process, whether it's an individual being rude or whatever. I want to know what the types of complaints are rather than who's being complained about, so that we can look and try and help sort out what can be done to stop that happening, because we can't afford as an authority, I don't believe, 300 or 400 complaints a year.
So, yeah, I've got a question myself, and then I'll come back to you, Steve. So I used to be a member of the clerk to the governor's team, and I used to also do the same thing in City of York. And coming back to the fact that, people lose a clerk, is there any scope for us as a council, through, say, the clerk to the governor's team or whatever, to offer locum clerking on a commercial basis to the parishes so that we can at least drop somebody in there for a short time until they manage to get themselves a clerk? I mean, we effectively sell that service to our schools. Could we sell that service to the parishes on a short-term basis?
it is actually an option that we're exploring. It's in its early stages, but yeah, that is an option that we're exploring in terms of providing something like that. Yeah.
Thank you. Steve.
just go back on the complaints. I just wonder if you can include how many times it's used for vexatious complaints as well, because I think that's a massive issue, particularly at town council and parish level. And also, when you say members, that is just town council and parishes.
That's correct.
Well, thank you both for coming this afternoon. Oh, sorry, George.
Thank you, Chris, for answering my question earlier. I mean, having subbed on standards a few times, I know the amount of work that's been done with the complaints and the reports, and it's a lively discussion. And the standards is looking at it and a way to try to simplify the system because it is extremely costly. But my question really is about what you mentioned earlier on some councils moving into some parish councils moving into parish meetings and how that process is going to be managed, because you said that you received some requests. So these requests normally come from the clerks, from the council members, from the community, and who actually makes the decision? Does it have to be a resolution made by a particular parish council?
There is a protocol, and yeah, we have had a number of requests, and any request can come from the parish council, and it needs to come through the official channel as a community governance review request, and we will look at it. The stance at the moment is because of the boundary review that's going on currently, we won't look at any community governance reviews unless they are deemed urgent. And we had one recently with Kirby Gundlath and Duggleby because it was just dysfunctional and wasn't able to operate. But the others, we do look into them and sort of, unless it is urgent, if they can operate and they can maintain ongoing for another 12, 18 months, then we'll leave them, log them and look at them again. So there is, as I say, another bigger piece of work that we'll look at in terms of looking at all of those requests that we've already had currently once the boundary review is complete, because it's not a quick process. It does need consultation and it will take probably a year to do that. So it wouldn't happen quickly, but we will be looking at them all as we go forward. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. Yeah, I mean, Caroline and I have been heavily involved in the Kirby Gundlath thing for quite a few years, I think. So but it was one that was absolutely failed. Okay, so thank you both, Mark, Christine, for coming this afternoon. Really appreciate it, and lots of information there. And thank you. So we now move to item 7, which is community safety and CCTV update. So welcome, Bridget Scaife, the North Yorkshire Partnership Manager for Community Safety. Good afternoon, Bridget.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to come today. You've all received the report and our presentation. I am going to choose to pick out some key points of the report for those that may not be as au fait with community safety in the hubs. So the purpose of the report that we've provided was to update on community safety CCTV across North Yorkshire, including a focus on community safety hubs, CCTV and the wider strategic community safety partnership work. The Community Safety and CCTV service. So the services falls under the Local Government Engagement Directorate within North Yorkshire Council. The new structures were adopted in May 2024. However, work continues to develop the service and the roles across North Yorkshire. The Crime and Disorder Act of 1998 underpins the community safety activity and at a strategic and operational level with focus on problem solving and the multi-agency approaches. The CCTV control rooms within North Yorkshire are owned and managed by North Yorkshire Council, and the transformation of the CCTV service is a priority within our service currently. The hubs. So the community safety hubs have been in place for several years, as many of the members here will be aware. These hubs are currently subject to review, principally around the geography and the need for a consistent working model, which currently is not as where we would like it to be. They continue to focus on cases that are complex and require multi-agency approaches, community engagement and reassurance. North Yorkshire Council's introduced 3 senior community safety officers through the restructure. Those are Harrogate, Skipton, Selby, and then Hambleton, Richmondshire, and then Scarborough, Rydale. These posts are supported by community safety officers within the hub and allocated police officers across and alongside the neighbourhood policing team. So what we're saying there is some hubs have designated North Yorkshire Police PCs and sergeants where others don't. It depends on the area that you're in. Moving forward, the community safety hubs will provide a local overview of activity and performance and common themes in all localities, including dealing with ASB, behaviour, early interventions, enforcement and the use of powers and tools, and mental health, trauma, drugs and alcohol. We've touched on in the report that you've seen around the knife bins and the rollout, and I believe, comms has gone out this week, giving a complete overview of that. And then North Yorkshire Community Safety Partnerships Arrangement. So this is a new delivery and a new arm of the Community Safety and CCTV service. So including within this presentation today, I have put together some slides which will give you a more complete overview of what partnerships is and how we deliver that. The CCTV service, these are currently CCTV control rooms, as I've said, and those are currently based in Harrogate, Scarborough and Northallerton, but there are some significant changes ahead with a provision in Selby, provided that is by a third party, it's not ourselves. They're currently run 24 hours, 365 days a year, and this is a service chargeable to Rydale is a different anomaly, as some of the members here will know. So Rydale CCTV is run by Rydale Cameras in Action, basically a charity. They have to have funding, they receive it from the various councils. But the CCTV control in Scarborough provides the 24-hour service, and that is rechargeable back to Rydale Cameras in Action. The future of CCTV across North Yorkshire is subject to further review and transformation, and the aim is to review our existing infrastructure, identify opportunities, maximising technology and working alongside our key partners, those being police, retail, business partners, etc. We've highlighted the recommendations, and if it's okay with yourselves, I'd like to come back to those recommendations after I presented the partnership team overview, because I think then it gives you the full picture of CCTV and community safety. I beg your pardon. So, as you can see, Nikki's kindly put up the presentation. So this is just to give you an overview. So within the team of partnerships, which sits alongside the community safety hubs, is myself as the partnership manager, which includes 2 senior development officers, a domestic abuse housing alliance officer known as DAHA, and a community safety officer that specialism is around domestic abuse. The 2 senior officers which I've touched on there are really our unique specialists in domestic abuse. The other is in hate crime, community cohesion and covering prevent, protect and prepare. The DAHA, which is the Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance officer, is working with the community safety team and housing to gain accreditation to enable the authority to benchmark how housing providers should respond to DA in the UK. This is a project that will take some time. It's very complex, but we have got an officer in place who has got a lot of experience and is working towards the accreditation. The Community Safety Officer for Domestic Abuse is working closely with this safety hubs along with senior development officers around domestic abuse. Thank you. Connectivity across the service between partnerships and the community safety hubs and other directorates across the whole authority. We know that community safety doesn't just into our little bubble, it hits every area of what we do within North Yorkshire Council. A clear understanding of the North Yorkshire Community Safety Partnership, strategic plans and priorities and how they align with the community safety hubs. And the next slide will show those. We have now, the new priorities have now been set and they will be shown on the next slide. Prevent, protect, prepare. So we've developed East, West and Central, a consistent approach while acknowledging that local issues and those community safety officers, seniors and operational attending and supporting the groups, with senior development officers being the central point of contact. Hubs to be actively involved in the protect, prepare, development, and a local maturity matrix is being developed. The 3 Ps, training for all officers to give a consistent level of understanding to include Martin's Law once this becomes legislation has been already been set up within all the teams, and channel panel an extremely busy area of work currently. And this is to protect the most vulnerable in our society and prevent them from being drawn into terrorism, a consistently busy area of work. We had channel panel yesterday. The whole meeting took 5.5 hours to go from start to finish, with 14 individuals being referred in through the prevent mechanism. We work with our counter-terrorism police on that. And when I highlight, it is a very worrying area of work and one that is just consistently becoming busier and busier. So the next slide shows the North Yorkshire Community Safety Partnership Plan for 24-28, and our priorities, the most 4 key priorities are community safety hubs, serious violence, domestic abuse, hate crime, which encompasses prevent and community cohesion. And under there, we've given some further details. Our approach is around early intervention and prevention, partnerships and collaboration, and working with our communities, which is key. And then finally, familiarisation with North Yorkshire and City of York domestic abuse strategy. Community safety officers have working knowledge of the strategy to continue to prioritise the tackling of DA, working with lead officers and the partnership. Acknowledgement and understanding for training around DA and the DAHA model across the community safety hubs to ensure that DA is recognised as part of the role of the community safety hubs, and give a greater understanding how essential working together is to understand the impact of this on our lives, recognising that the cases within the hubs are very, very likely to have an element of domestic abuse, be this victim or perpetrators. Domestic homicide reviews. So a number of the team are working actively within this area. It is a statutory duty. So if there is a death that is connected with any form of domestic abuse, and this includes suicide, a report is put together with a panel, and then that is sent to the Home Office for review. Currently, we have one that has just been submitted to the Home Office. We're in the early stages of a scoping document for a second. That has been accepted, and there's been a chair and author agreed. Unfortunately, it's sad to say that we are sending out in January 2 more scoping documents for deaths that may be related to domestic abuse, and these may also have to have domestic homicide reviews, but that decision will be made when the scoping document has been returned by all partners. As I've touched on, we continue with the work with Channel Panel, and I've said that this is an extremely busy area. Embedded within the partnership team is an understanding of working with the strategic and operational officers, delivering a common goal of early intervention prevention for the community safety hubs and working with our communities. I bring it back to the recommendations. We didn't really know what you wanted today. So what we felt that we're doing right across all the various meetings of this right across North Yorkshire, we're all giving a very similar report. And what we would like from today is for you to highlight to us what you would like going forward, be this a joint approach with North Yorkshire Police. We are as Thirsk and Malton is served by 3 community safety hubs because of the geography. So you'll have Hambleton, which covers the Thirsk area, Malton, Rydale hub, and then Filey by the Scarborough. So there is various officers working out of those, and obviously the police teams as well. We're more than happy to look at what you would like us to deliver going forward, be that data, be we're setting up a performance framework for the hubs, and there'll be some data from that and information of what we're working on and what is hotspots for ASB, you know, who are we supporting vulnerable peoples within those community events, etc. And from that information, we can take that out from that framework across North Yorkshire. So today, obviously, I'm here to answer any questions, but if you'd like to let us know what you would like going forward from the report that we can give, and how often you would like the community safety teams to come and give you that report.
Thank you very much, Bridget. Alison.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still relatively new to being a councillor, but there's a lot of words in there that I'm not familiar with, and I think keep it simple is probably the thing. For example, what is a maturity matrix and what is a scoping document?
With the domestic homicide, a scoping document will go out to all agencies. So somebody unfortunately passes away through domestic violence or suicide because they've been in violence, we will send out a document that will go to health and adult services, community teams, police, everyone that could, MARAC, which is the domestic, if you're referred in, you've been either a victim or perpetrator. So it will go out to all partner agencies. From there, we'll gather all the information about that person, how many times they've come into service. It goes to ambulance service, it goes to the hospitals. So it lets us know, it gives us a full picture of that person's life and how often they've come to services. So it'll show us if that is, we feel that that is adequate to be a domestic homicide review. A maturity matrix, and that's to do with the prevent, protect and prepare, the 3 Ps as we call it. So each area is doing that. So they'll look at their areas. What when it's Martin's Law, there'll be the 3 tiers. So if there's an event in your area, so we would look in Rydale, Castle Howard. So that'll have a heavy footfall of people. How would we look at mitigating I don't know, a vehicle coming through traffic to unfortunately maim and hurt people. So that maturity matrix is a localized piece document to say what is our risks in our area, how do we mitigate, and what can we do to try and make those areas safe. It's yeah. And but it'll tell us where we are. So it'll start at 0 and maybe come to 5. A lot at the moment are sitting at 1 because they haven't done a great deal of work, but it'll let us look where we're going to end up, hopefully.
George.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Bridget, for coming today. About a year ago, Councillor Watt and myself were working on the Kirby Moorside base for some of the officers in Rydale, because obviously Kirby Moorside is quite a central location, covering Helmsley and areas in Helmsley and Sennington as well. This was, I think, a new initiative that you were trying at the time. So we are nearly about 50 weeks. It was 14th of December, I think it was announced. So do you have any feedback, updates on that? Is that something that
I can't really speak to the police on this one. I think it's unlikely at the moment. There's been quite a lot of change within the neighbourhood policing. We've had retirements, 2 retirements recently, both of those areas. They've gone out for recruitment. They have been successful in that recruitment, but the officers that they've recruited are currently on response on a band. The police work in different bands, on a band 2, which is in response, which has haven't got a great deal of staff there, so they will be coming over, but at what point I'm not sure. It depends when they're released from that. So currently that would be on hold, but I could certainly get some more feedback from Inspector Martin Dennison for that.
would be much appreciated? Thank you.
Sorry, Joy.
Thank you, and thank you for that, Bridget. The CCTV, you do explain in your report that it's all under review, and I do note that Pickering and well, Rydale's cameras in action. Will it be something that the council will be looking at to roll across the board? Or is it going to continue?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's
fine. CCTV is under review. It's very expensive. It's not statutory, so it's not something as a North Yorkshire Council we have to do. We like to do, but our partners often are the winners. So the North Yorkshire Police, they pay an amount towards CCTV. It's not a significant amount. So the CCTV managers, the current managers, are in talks with the police to see where we can go with that, because we can't just deliver this service. It's 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It's expensive. As you'll all, I think we had the talk earlier, things are always being updated. There's a lot of expense to be out happening around CCTV. One of the control rooms will be closing. It will be coming into one of the others. So I'd like, they really are aware of where Rydale is and Rydale cameras in action. When it comes in, I've really been pushing, and I feel that they accept that, and they feel that it would only be fair. But why, until that transformation review is complete, I can't say for definite.
Can I just come back on that? Sorry, no, yeah. Just, I mean, some of you around this room realise you mentioned Castle Howard. We've mentioned, well, I'm mentioning Pickering, and we've had to jump through hoop and CCTV, and possibly with Martin's Law coming in is possibly going to prevent activities happening in our towns and communities, because it's just going to be too onerous on groups to do, and that's my concern. If we lose the CCTV, well, our volunteers have already done the prevent course, which was good. We're all super vigilant in Pickering, but I just want it flagging up here and now that the CCTV is so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, actually, I'm not quite sure where it fits. You've mentioned suicide a couple of times, and the mental health, but I'm just wondering what collaboration there is with the suicide prevention team in this, because I know of a couple of people in the Rydale area have been reaching out to the council, to the local Tees Trust, I think it was, and were failed completely, and unfortunately passed away last year, or definitely one last year. And I just wonder whether what collaboration is going on that side of it, because it's not necessarily from domestic abuse, it's more just mental health issues.
So we work collaboratively with a lot of areas. Suicide would really come under the public health, but yeah, we come under public health. But we have been working on for quite some time in Rydale, as you'll all know, that we have 7 bridges across A64, and I've personally been doing quite a large piece of work around that, because unfortunately a couple of those bridges have become significant areas when people are in crisis that they tend to go to. So we have been working with, I think it's Highways England. As that name changed, I get confused with, yeah, National Highways. Sorry, I know I was getting the wrong way around. We've been working very closely with them and with the public health team, with police, ambulance, fire, because once anybody's on those bridges, that stops. That road has got to be closed for a number of hours. So we have been working around CCTV on those particular bridges that would be highlighted if somebody's there in crisis. We wanted originally just to have the bridges numbered. Who thought anything could be simpler than that? Well, I found in the last 18 months that that's really difficult. The highways don't want to number a bridge, because what we found was that people, when they were in crisis and you were driving near that bridge, you would say, oh, but I don't know which bridge it is, because you wouldn't. All we wanted was a big number painted on it that if somebody passed in light or dark, they would ring in, they'd say it's bridge 2. So that would enable emergency services to get to that bridge without having to go 7 bridges to get that they wanted to. So we're working on that. I think we're really almost there now around some CCTV on 3 of the bridges, which are predominantly those bridges. So that's a suicide campaign that we have been running within community safety, but public health have actually been feeding into that, and they really are our go-to. We work with Samaritans, and they've been working on that project with us as well, and also with the blue light services that attend around their training and after care when they are faced with what can be a very traumatic experience for them as well.
Caroline.
Thanks. I know from old that the CCTV is really expensive, and we did everything we could at Rydale to move it on. But let's not go there. That's all water under the bridge. But I am wondering, with the new responsibilities held by the deputy mayor, where that money is going to come from, because surely that should be coming from the joint budget for York and North Yorkshire, and the deputy mayor has to have some input. So it would be interesting to know what that input is and how much money they're going to chip in the pot.
And this is part of the transformation in the team. Paul Romans and Julia Stack, who are my equivalents for CCTV and community safety in the hubs, that's what they're working on around the funding, the joint funding, which it needs to be more joint than what it currently is.
Sam.
Yeah, personally, I feel that we can't have enough CCTV, you know, even in a little place like Filey. You know, I mean, we use Scarborough there, and it helps solve so many crimes and stops a lot of crimes as well. You know what I mean? And it's one of them things. It's if you cut it, it's going to cause more damage, you know, than it saves, and it's going to cost more. So as far as CCTV goes, get more of it. You know what I mean? And I believe in we should be free, but it's actually helps solve the problem. The other question that I have is you mentioned 4 officers plus the partnership manager, which deals with 2 senior development officer, a domestic abuse housing alliance officer, community service. How many of them are actually dealing with people that have been abused? Because I mean, we're such a huge area, and I know from Scarborough and Filey and Whitby, I would have said you need maybe just 2 in that particular area alone. I'm chair of the community police action group in a place like Filey, and I know how many domestic abuse cases do actually come up. And then if I times it for the number of people in Scarborough and the number of people in Whitby, I know we are that side of it. I mean, there must be work for lots of people, to do that job. And I think just, how many are actually dealing with the side of the world, other side of North Yorkshire, and then they're coming over here, you know what I mean? They're just not going to be able to deal with it.
So the partnership part, the office in there are strategic roles. So they're the strategic leads on those areas. So then that filters down into the hubs. So each community safety hub has X amount of community safety officers, and they are the operational arm. They're the doers, as I would say. So Scarborough, for instance, has 4 community safety officers, which covers Scarborough, Whitby and Filey. Rydale has 2, but they also cover Hambleton and Whitby, currently because we've got somebody on maternity leave. Skipton area has 1 community safety officer, Selby has 1 community safety officer, and Richmondshire has 1. And so they're the doing arm. So my officers in the partnership team are those the strategic officers, but they're the ones that they'll come to for the training, for any questions and queries, etc. But each of the operation, then we have the seniors officers, and each take up attending various different meetings, be it MARAC, MATAC, which is perpetrators, victims, and also then we have the strategic arm will look at the DHRs, and they're on those teams. So it is, as you find with the community safety partnership, you have the community partnership here, and then all the meetings underneath which feed down, but then the information has to come back up, and that's how we can then look at where. And that's why we say the hubs are under review, because we're looking at where the need is. You can't, we couldn't flood Skipton with 6 officers. The need isn't there, but the need is currently Scarborough, Harrogate. So I think we are looking at strengthening the team in Harrogate. We've got to look at the need and what that need is telling us within those areas, and then we will strengthen those areas with operational officers.
Okay, I'll take a last question from Keane.
Thanks, hi Bridget. I just want to, I think, join with the colleagues in stressing the importance of CCTV in our Rydale towns. Of course, I think we should negotiate on that and make sure partners are paying their fair share, but I wouldn't like to see a situation where that CCTV provision ceases. Obviously, I recognise there's a cost to that, but I think there's immense public benefit too. Just in terms of the joint working between the council and the neighbourhood policing teams, obviously we had very close collaboration in this building with our teams from Rydal District Council and the police team sitting actually side by side together, sharing intelligence and information. I'm actually very proud of the work that we did at Rydale in that regard and what we achieved. You remember we had some issues in Norton with antisocial behaviour. We addressed those jointly, the police and the council, very effectively and robustly. We provided that reassurance in a really effective way. So I suppose my question is, how is that close working evolving and changing? Is it still as effective as it was? And how might that be able to be improved now we've got the new structures in place?
So as managers, we are speaking with North Yorkshire Police as a whole, because they're going through restructures, and we're trying to tie in our restructure with theirs. So as you'll know, each area is different, but we're trying to make a consistent approach. So what we're really looking at is each community safety hub of the 7 community safety hubs would each have a designated North Yorkshire Police PC in every hub. So every hub would be the same. Then we have various hubs, Scarborough ourselves, that are really in an enviable position, that have the neighbourhood police team with us, and that's an ideal gold standard. But a community safety hub PC would sit collectively in the same building with the officers as well. Just to flick back to your first question about CCTV, I can just say and confidently say that North Yorkshire Council look at the CCTV in the same way that yourself are, and they are looking at some funding to help us progress it. It's not at this moment, we're not switching the cameras off, can I just say that? We're not switching the cameras off. I think it is recognised across the authority of how important that is, but it is in transformation, and we're looking at, you know, where savings could be made, but where then we could put greater resilience into the areas that really need that.
Thanks, Bridget, for that. Just a small follow-up if I can. You mentioned about the transformation the police are doing as well. One of the issues you touched upon is that in this constituency of Thirsk and Malton, we've actually got 3 different neighbourhood policing teams, and clearly that mismatch of geography is probably a barrier to data sharing, to discussions between councillors. Are you looking at the geographies and trying to marry those up in some way? Because I think that definitely needs looking at. I think could be quite useful.
We are. But wow, it's a job, because you look at, you've got different police commands. We're working with really senior police teams currently. There's meetings in very regularly. We are trying to align together. I don't think it's going to be a quick fix, but they appreciate as well that they need, their commitment to working in partnership is as great as ours, and they realise that without working in partnership we can't achieve anything. So yeah, everyone's trying to work towards that, but it isn't going to be a quick fix. But they're certainly listening to us, and they're implementing quite a lot of changes that we're trying to get to. So yeah, they are working, but it's not going to be a quick fix, I'll be honest.
Okay, I'll take a final question from Gareth. It's not so much a question, Nigel, it's a bit of a statement, because of course on the printed papers there's a recommendation and there's a question asked for us. So I'll come on to that shortly, but I just want to you know, play my usual role of Scrooge, but really give a big dose of realism into this. I noticed Bridget, isn't it? Sorry, it is, said that North Yorkshire Council values CCTV. We are North Yorkshire Council. We're members of North Yorkshire Council. And let's be clear about it. We will have some very difficult decisions to take in this upcoming budget round. And I'm sorry, you know, Steve, you can shake your head. We can all run away from it.
Stick to the topic, Gareth.
We can all run away. We can all run away from the reality of it, but things like CCTV, as has been pointed out, are not statutory services, and it's right that we look for partners to fund it, the police to fund it, and all the rest of it. But, you know, I value it as well as anybody else does. But again, and I just come back to the policy statement made by government yesterday, where we faced a hit overnight of 14 million quid as a result of rural services delivery grant. It's that type of stuff that, you know, we will have to balance. Unless we can get outside funding, some of this stuff will be, how can I put this? It would be under pressure. Yeah, very difficult. Finally, the question was, how often do we want to report back to this committee? I think the important bit for us as local members is working with the local hubs, local officers to deal with the local issues. I know I liaise and work alongside those that deal with Thirsk, for example. So I would suggest, Chair, perhaps once a year with the headline figures, the strategic stuff, unless anything changes dramatically in the meantime.
So that was gents, can we just, yeah, right. We just stick to the subject, please. Yeah. So I think there's a point well made, Gareth, at the end there with the frequency. I think annually that would be great, and I think the statistics, etc., that would be great. I think that would inform us on an annual basis. So I'll just come to Joy first. I'll response to that.
I mean, this maybe isn't the time to discuss it. I'm sure we'll have a full and frank conversation and debate about it in the future. I just wanted to point out it isn't our statutory duty to provide this, but it could have a significant effect on the costs of our statutory duties that we have to implement, being bigger through antisocial behaviour, clear up of things, and our economic development. Because if we don't have the CCTV, I found it extremely difficult to hold a public event in Pickering that was beneficial to the businesses that keep them going all year round. Because if there wasn't the CCTV there, I'm sure, especially if Martin's Law is brought in, we won't be getting the economic development in our towns. It was the Martin's Law thing is from the yeah. So I just wanted that.
Yeah.
That
No.
explained.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Joy. Sam.
I want to thank Bridget for the work that she's actually done, and the fact that she did highlight there is a problem in the Scarborough area and Whitby and Filey. And I personally would like to see more information on this rather than once a year. And either if it comes to me, quarterly, I'd be more than happy to look at it.
Yeah. So I mean, on that, I think if we have an annual report from yourself or whatever, like similar to this, I think, Bridget, that would be very good. If you want to send out any further information between those times, I'm sure that Nikki will circulate that to members, and that might be the way to go with that. Great. So I think, does that give you enough steer from us? That's fun.
And we can obviously come back to you if
Yeah.
you have anything specific
Of
like
course.
here, please do let us know before that.
Absolutely.
We'll deliver that.
I do appreciate you attending this afternoon, and it's quite two very interesting topics there. Thank you very much. So now, members, we come to the work programme. The current work programme is laid out there. Has anybody got any comments on the work programme? So I think one thing that Carol and I have been discussing, and I think Steve, you were maybe in this, is about regarding the HGVs in Malton and the air quality. And I think there have been some emails flying around that. I just wondered whether it might be beneficial for us for the next meeting to receive an update on that situation from Dr. Nick, Dr. Kevin, let's call him that, Dr. Kevin. If he could give us an update, even if it's just a written report on what the situation is in there and the logic behind it, because to me, on the face of it, it looks confusing, and so I think we'd benefit from an update. So I mean,
to be, no, I must have done to actually, and I wasn't sure actually if you were in the email chain. I've lost track of.
No, I wasn't, but somebody kindly.
Yeah, it's not that complicated. A written report will be fine, to be honest. It's been going through Transport Environment Committee anyway.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll just ask for a written report then in that case. So I think with that then, I think we can conclude the meeting this afternoon. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Sorry, members, just if we're closing the meeting, we need to clear the chamber quickly because we've actually got to set up for a wedding and I do want to go out tonight.
All right, that's an unusual one. Okay.
The wedding isn't this evening, it's in the morning, but we
Right,
need to get
okay.
cleared.
All right, so I will close the meeting and ask you to vacate the building quickly. Thank you very much. Thank you.